Welcome to Asiatique. I'm your host, Dr. Raymond. Just last week, the last governor of Hong Kong, Lord Patten, appeared in a BBC interview. He was asked about his views towards the 25th anniversary of Hong Kong's Handover. And he said that the Chinese Communist Party, he made it distinctively clear between China and the Chinese Communist Party. He said that the Chinese Communist Party have pretty comprehensively broken their word, which is contained in an international treaty called the Sino-British Joint Declaration. And when asked if his very last words on Hong Kong still holds true, that is, the Hong Kong people are to run Hong Kong, and that is the promise, and that is the unshakable destiny, Patten hesitated. In this episode, we will look into Patten's interview, but from the Asian perspective. For those who are not familiar with Hong Kong is a city situated at the far southern tip of China. The place was once a British colony for some 150 years. Part of the city, namely the Hong Kong Island and Kowloon Peninsula, was ceded to the British in 1842 and 1860, ending the First and the Second Opium War respectively. And the third part, which is the New Territories, was on lease to the British for some 99 years, from 1898. So, in 1997, the UK handed the entire Hong Kong, which includes the Hong Kong Island, Kowloon Peninsula, and the New Territories, back to China. And this year, 2022, marks the 25th anniversary of the handover. Yet, after the 2019 riots in Hong Kong and the introduction of the Hong Kong security laws, some say that these have brought the city's democracy to a halt, and that there have been voices saying that the Chinese government have broken their word in the sense that the handover, which was supposed to be protected by the spirit of the one country, two systems framework, and that the Chinese government should maintain Hong Kong's way of life unchanged for another 50 years, has indeed collapsed. So when Patten was asked if he agreed with this, he said that the Chinese have produced their own version of democracy over the years, and that their version of democracy is that they basically need to know what's going to happen next, even before the elections. And those who got elected would do what they would be told. One word that Patten didn't use was rigged. Now, he also said that the candidates in these elections have to be vetted, and that the number of directly directed seats has decreased over time, plus that most of the seats are now won by pro-establishment, pro-Beijing candidates. So he thought that the election system in Hong Kong has somehow steered away from the democracy that he knows. And he furthered that what he did back in Hong Kong when he was still the governor was to make election as fair as possible, and that he wanted as many people to be able to vote as possible. But here is the problem. Is democracy the same all over the world? Well, the notion that political institutions such as democracy and dictatorship are more suited to some cultures than others is not new. Some say that monarchy was most suited to the individualistic European states, and that despotism was most suited to the collectivist Orient. But what many believe, here in Asia, is that the best government for any given country was one that leads men by following their propensities and inclinations. And this factor has obviously been ignored by Patten. Say, for example, if you study economics, you would know that the propensity to save among Asians, in particular Chinese, is much higher than that of the Western world. Now, be it Brits or the Americans. So, if we were to use an example to demonstrate what this could mean, to the difference between the democracy Patten was referring to and what democracy Asians were thinking about, we could think of, let's say, buying a pair of new shoes. Now, try to imagine this. For people in the West, no one is going to care which pair you will buy, the new shoes, because using their angle, this is called freedom. So, what does that mean? That means you just go and get your pair of new shoes, be it sport shoes or leather shoes. Whether your country is going to import or make more sport shoes or leather shoes, therefore depends on the market. That is, how many people are going to choose those shoes. Now, so in a way, people choose what shoes a country would import as a result of the market forces. Now, that's what freedom in the West is about, right? Now, but for the East, things are a little bit different. Now, a country from the Eastern world would say, hey, we're a manufacturing economy, so we make and export stuff to the world. So please, everybody buys work boots because we're supposed to work, we're supposed to export. Now, yes, you do have your freedom in choosing your pair, but please, it has to be a pair of work boot, not a pair of sports shoes and not a pair of heels. So you might say, well, there goes the freedom and hence democracy, right? Now, if you think of it that way, you really missed something very important. Now, look around the world. Every country has its role, and it's so difficult to change sometimes. Now, even if they want to, others might say no. Now, let me give you some examples. Say, for instance, look at South America. Now, what are their major exports? Sugar, bananas, coca, coffee, tobacco, beef, corn, wheat, and of course, energy as well, right? I'm telling you this not because I look down on them, okay? Not because these things are simple. No, but because these things are exactly the stuff that we need for our daily lives. But one question is, do you really think that these countries would also want to produce something more advanced? I mean, say, semiconductor chipsets, or whatever stuff with bigger profit margins? Now, stuff that could make the people feel better, more advanced? Try to imagine this. These countries are always producing these foodstuff. I mean, can they not do better? No, it's not that they couldn't do better. I mean, can they? Well, no, they really can't. It's not that they couldn't. As South Americans, I'm not saying that they cannot do it, okay? It's just that the Western world wouldn't let them. For example, look at how the United States of America is pushing Netherlands to ban ASML, the Dutch chip-making gear supplier, from selling to China. Well, quoting from people familiar with the matter, this could expand their campaign, I mean the United States campaign, to curb the country's rise, China's rise, of course. Now wait. Everybody knows that political ideologies evolve with changing economic conditions, division of labor, relations of production, class forces, etc., etc. So when you can't even put food on the table, you won't have the time to think about where to get your ballet class, right? And when the United States and the UK want to contain, well, if they could, or at least restrain China from economically developing and hence politically evolving, why the heck on earth would they expect China to be embracing the same type of democracy as they do? Now, if you've been seeding a rice field all throughout your history, which is what a lot of Asian countries are still doing today, in the Philippines, in Vietnam, in Thailand, in Indonesia, in Cambodia, etc., etc. Now, mind you, it's a rice field, okay, not a wheat field. Now, if you're from the West, you probably only think of a wheat field. But you have to work in teams, and you could hardly automate the seeding in a rice field. So you have to, do it as a family. So team or family work is so essential in seeding rice. Now, group goals are given much higher priority than individual ones. So going back to that sport shoes analogy, the group goal is therefore given more weight than the individual target. In other words, everybody goes for a pair of work boot. Now, oh yes, you can choose the color or the style of your work boot, but it has to be a work boot. And you know what? This group goal of a collectivist society is exactly what Chris Patten referred to as the vetting. Now, he thought that was the vetting. No, come on. When you already have that goal and you try to go for that goal, that is not vetting. We're just trying to find the right person for that goal. Well, I have to admit that the West does much better media communications in promoting democracy, but we also have to respect that we are now in a totally different system with a very different cultural context than the West. I mean here in Hong Kong. We Asians want group goals for countries to develop. Because look, China is so crowded. We're talking about 1.4 billion people to feed. You have to put food for 1.4 billion people. You have to have a collective goal. Well, look, everybody wants to develop. China wants to develop. The Philippines wants to develop. Vietnam wants to develop. Every nation in Asia wants to develop. And every one of them are basically, populous nations. So when Chris Patten said that Hong Kong's democracy was going backwards, and that even the candidates would have to be vetted, he missed the whole point. It's not just Hong Kong's Western-style democracy we're talking about here, but rather China Hong Kong's role as a special administrative region of China, a country that we should be talking about, and that is a group thing, a group goal. Well, even though Chris Patten said that the UK wasn't preparing Hong Kong for independence when they handed the city back to China, his words and thoughts actually betrayed him. It's already 25 years since the handover, and Patten is still talking all about these, contradicting concepts, if you know what I'm talking about. Why? Well, he's selling his latest book, after all. So, until then, ciao.
Before you leave, please be sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and share this with your friends. See you in the next episode.